Welcome to CCMB Conversations. This is a space to discuss with experts and understand how science and technology are shaping in India. I am Somdatta Karak and I'll take you with a conversation with Jagdish Krishnaswamy, who is the Dean of the School of Environmental Sustainability at the Indian Institute for Human Settlements, Bengaluru. He studies rivers and other freshwater ecosystems in India. Needless to point out that this is the ecosystem that sustains most of life on Earth. But with Jagdish, we'll try to understand the ecology of these water bodies, changes that are happening to the ecosystems, and their impact on life. Welcome, Jagdish, to the CCMB Conversations. Yeah. So, Jagdish, the first time I heard about your work, the thing that came to my mind is the water cycle that we studied in schools. We have water bodies, marine, fresh, and all kinds, and water evaporates, rain comes down, and through that we get drinking water. So, is that a very simplistic way of thinking about water? As an expert of water ecosystems, how do you look at water?
So, fundamentally what we learned in school about the water cycle still remains. All those processes that you just mentioned, including evaporation, recycling, rainfall, and freshwater flows, all of that is there. What we are now learning much more about is how the distribution of moisture over space and time is changing over various parts of the earth, how it is impacting different ecosystems, and how it is also impacting human well-being. So, that is the part where we are learning many new things. We are also learning much more about how some of the changes that we brought about the earth in terms of changing the vegetation, reforestation, or changing the land cover, land use, or urbanization, how this is impacting different regional changes in the water cycle, which are very important, but also the quality of water.
Got it. So, can you please tell us a little bit about what kinds of water bodies you look at, where are these situated?
So, we are blessed with a diversity of water bodies in India. So, we have mystica swamps, for example, in the Western Ghats, which are very unique groundwater fed systems, surface and groundwater fed systems, with a very unique assembly of plants and animals which are found on those the trees and the other vegetation in these mystica swamp areas. We also have marshes, we have swamps, we have rivers, estuaries. We have rocky outcrops with small pools of water. We have human-made barrages, reservoirs. We have human-made wetlands which have multifunctional roles in terms of supporting irrigation, fisheries, as well as biodiversity. So, in terms of the diversity of freshwater ecosystems, we are probably one of the most diverse globally.
And do you look into all these different kinds of ecosystems?
Not always, but depending on where we are doing our work, we try to situate some of our work in whichever local water bodies there are, whether it's a stream or whether it's a reservoir or a swamp or a marsh, or for that matter an estuary. So, it depends on where our work takes us, and then we will look at the local context and find out which set of water bodies is most important for the ecology of that particular area.
So, then what is the big reason for you to do the work that you do? Like, what drives your work? What decides the questions that you are asking, and thus the locations that you are looking at?
The questions that we are asking is, one is of course related to just the knowledge and the science of what are the implications of changes in these very unique freshwater ecosystems. What does it do to the biodiversity? What does it do to their functions and services? And the larger question is, if we have to retain some of these or restore some of this in the future, because we know that they are very important for well-being as well, apart from their value for biodiversity and ecology. We need to raise awareness, we need to raise evidence, we need to work with other people in other disciplines, social scientists, economists, so that the value of the services provided by these ecosystems, freshwater ecosystems, is realized and incorporated in policy, so that they become an integral part of our development, sustainable development plans.
Got it. Can you please elaborate with an example on a certain finding where you have seen that social scientists and economists have been able to help us realize this value of freshwater ecosystems?
So just a few days back, there was a paper published, I think it's in one of the nature journals, where they have economists and others have tried to put a value on the role that the Amazon forests play in generating rainfall in that region. So the forests transpire water, enormous quantities of water into the atmosphere. They pump it into the atmosphere through transpiration, and that water gets back to the ground in some other places as rainfall. So they have tried to quantify the value of this forest in terms of this contribution to other regions' productivity, economic productivity. So I think that this is one example. There are examples where also people have tried to quantify the role played by, for example, mangrove ecosystems in sequestering carbon, in the also stocking carbon in the sediment, and also the support that mangroves give for fisheries. And there was a paper published many years ago in the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, USA, by Indian who including an economist, Sodamani, for example. She showed that mangrove forests were protecting many villages from the storms during cyclones. So and and then you're putting a value in terms of saving human lives and infrastructure on the ecosystem services. So I think these are some examples of how people are getting together and trying to make this type of information available to decision makers, citizens, and the public at large.
Right. Let's come to the rivers of India. I mean, they have been in conversation. I mean, they have always captured the Indian minds, right?
Yes.
And then there have been latest conversations on connecting the rivers. Dams are being built on these rivers. Riverfront development projects are being taken. What do your studies tell us about the river ecosystem currently?
Yeah. So I think that before we embark on such large scale transformation of our river systems, we have to draw upon the many decades of experience we have on how our water infrastructure has actually functioned in terms of costs and benefits. And while some of this water infrastructure was absolutely necessary for us, for example, in providing irrigation for our green revolution, we now need to think about other ways of managing our water structure, because some of the older ideas that rivers flowing into the sea is a waste, these are now not supported by evidence and science.
So water going into sea is not wastage?
Certainly not, because the mixture of freshwater, sediments and seawater creates these very highly productive environments for fisheries, for many other type of prawns and clams and so on. So the blue economy of some of these areas is dependent on the rivers reaching the sea. And plus they also support mangroves, which are very important in this era of sea level rise. We need the sediments brought by the rivers to be deposited in the estuaries and deltas as one way of combating the impacts of sea level rise. If we reduce the amount of sediment reaching these areas, then the coastal erosion and also the sinking of deltas will happen at a much faster rate. So river linking can actually disrupt many of the sediment supplies to the mouths of these rivers. Also, we are also mixing up different types of river systems. Each river in India comes from a different geological and biogeographic origin. And some are more polluted, some are less polluted, some have a very different geochemistry compared to others. So when we trying to mix up all of them, some have more invasive species already, some have still intact. So when we are doing the linking, we might be completely changing, homogenizing across these river ecosystems. And secondly, this whole idea of river linking is also based on the premise that we have areas which are supposed to be water surplus, and there are parts of the country which are supposed to be water deficient. While when you just look at it like that, it might seem very logical, but the wherever the parts of the country where water is supposed to be surplus, that surplus water is actually performing very important functions, including taking the sediment downstream, including being part of the ecology of downstream areas. So it's not as if that excess water is available to be exported elsewhere. It is performing important services in the place where it's supposedly in excess. So we must be careful when we categorize entire areas as water surplus and water deficient. Plus, climate change is going to change the distribution of moisture across the country in some decades. So then why are we just trying to categorize this at this point in time and then designing these large scale transformations? I think we need to have much more rethinking about this. There's been also been some recent evidence from other work done, modeling work, that suggests that this redistribution of moisture which might occur because of river linking and subsequent changes in irrigation, soil moisture, might actually have a depressing effect on, say, the rainfall in September that we get through the feedback from evapotranspiration and land surface processes into the atmosphere. So I think that we have to be careful about these large scale transformations. We should use the latest science and evidence, and this should be the last resort. If we can solve many of our water problems at a local or regional scale without these large scale disruptions and transformations, that would be the best course.
So then that brings me to the final question on what kinds of water solutions do you recommend, if not linking rivers or building dams?
So we will always have some form of storages needed. We will definitely need to look at the local agricultural ecosystems. There are places in India where very water intensive crops are being grown. So if we can reduce the demand for irrigation by switching to other less water intensive crops, but keeping our overall food security and nutritional requirements intact, because some of these water intensive crops are not necessarily very important for our nutritional security.
Right.
And so if we shift through incentives and through other support for farmers towards less water intensive crops, then the demand for more storages, more abstraction of water from rivers, we can do somewhat, and that water can go back into replenishing our groundwater aquifers, our rivers and wetlands, and overall then we will have a much more resilient, climate resilient social ecological condition, so that overall productivity will be intact in the coming decades.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.